Welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I am the Backyard Professor. You've probably never seen me before, but here I am. In the flesh for the first time on video, that is today. Let's do another Bobby Fischer game. He's playing a man named Tears. This is the Sicilian defense. Hang on, let me close this window. I don't want this noise of my traffic going by. The traffic gets noisy. Yesterday was nice and sunny. I was able to get outside. Today it's snowing and windy. I mean, you know, I can't win. All right, let's do this. This is the Sicilian defense Fischer's playing. He's black in this particular game. Knight c3, knight c6. Here we go. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not supposed to sing. I can't sing on key anyway, so that's how it works. We're not singing here. We're playing chess. Come on, get with it, man. Bishop g7, bishop g2. They both fianchetto the kingside bishops. Fischer gently bumps up, supports his pawn, gives him a good pawn center. f4. Here comes the f-pawn immediately. Fischer is going to also cautiously approach the center with the e6 push at this point. We will see why shortly. Knight f3. And now knight g to e7. There's no point in Fischer putting his knight here and letting him push the e-pawn. He'll just have to move his knight again, right? So it makes sense to go to e7. This changes the dynamic of the center because now the knight is hitting here and here and here and here. If the knight had come to here, it would be hitting this pawn and this square, the d5. But it's here, so that makes the dynamic of the center different. It really does make a difference where you put your knights in the opening is all I'm observing, right? Now let's see, they both castle. We have a castle on the white side and a castle on the black side. Okay, rook to b1. Fischer will match that. Rook to b8. He's trying to be cautious for future excursions. Knight comes back to e2. He's going to try to rearrange his knight. Now notice what else Fischer's knight placement on e7 gives him an opportunity to do. That is stronger than if he had put the knight up to f6. The knight supports this square and this square. This square is owned. Both of these pawns push to this square. The knight holds this square. Fischer can contend and win this square, and that's why he pushes the f-pawn. Boink. f5. Yeah, that makes sense based on the situation at this point. Now, that's not saying the f5 pawn push is a good move. I'm just saying it's... at this point, it's supported, right? That's what I'm noting. Bishop to e3, continuing developing, and now Fischer brings up the b5 pawn, and he responds by a center pawn push. So the tenseness in the center builds. The fight for the center is continuing. Fischer has a little more space on the queen side because of his pawn pushes, but this fight is going to be in the center without question. Knight to d5. A lot of center action going on. These kind of openings makes us have to calculate. There's a lot of possible calculation variations. What I will point out to you, you can study these out on your own, what I will point out to you is this acquires a target because the bishop is not supported. It's hanging. That is realistically why he put that knight there. Does that make sense? And the bishop does bump back to f2. And now that gives Fischer a chance to take the pawn instead of the pawn taking Fischer here. And bishop responds by taking c5. He did not respond by retaking the pawn. He took a pawn on c5. Kind of interesting. Rook e8. Fischer has center double pawns at the moment. They're not weak at this point. They are really fighting and supporting excellent central squares. So f takes e5 now. Thiers pulls the trigger on the central pawn, and now the knight can take e5. And now the knight can take the knight on e5. And now the bishop can take the knight on e5. So they're trying to clarify the position somewhat, and he's got a target. He goes right to c4. Rather than responding to the threat at this point, Fischer develops a piece, giving him a chance to connect his rooks sooner, and he hits the hanging bishop. So the question is Thiers going to respond by taking the knight or moving the bishop? Yeah, he takes the knight. Okay, so the knight is gone out of the center. Fischer takes the bishop, check to the king. King comes to h1, and now queen comes back down to d6. He bumps the pawn to d4, hitting a target at the bishop, and the bishop will come back. Remember, those bishops, the fianchettoed bishops, are great guardians of the king. He wants to keep his bishop if possible. Yeah? And now that gives Thiers a chance to take out the e-pawn of Fischer, and Fischer has a chance to develop the bishop by, instead of taking it with the queen or the rook, bring the bishop out, develop a piece, have more diagonal territory, more squares, and connect your rooks. So that explains very well why you want to respond by taking it with the bishop, doesn't it? That makes sense. You're developing, you're strengthening your center, and you're connecting your rooks, all with one move. That's why that move makes good sense, in my opinion. d5, he's going to bump the d-pawn up. He's got good support from the bishop. Bishop comes back to f7. Now, Fischer has the bishop pair, and Thiers doesn't, so he's going to try. Fischer won't mind seeing the board open like this. You notice it is open. Here a few moves ago, we had all kinds of conglomeration in the middle, didn't we? Now look how it's cleared out. Fischer is doing that deliberately because he has the bishop pair, and bishops like the open boards. Yes, it's a simple concept. Put it into your games. Not those of you who are playing me and wiping me out because you do this, everyone else. I have had some terrific chess games online where I just get blister caked by the bishops. You guys know how to play your bishops. You're good. You're awesome. And by the way, our chess club has 298 members. We're almost to 300. Two of you, quick! Turn this stupid video off and come and join our chess club if you haven't joined us. Unleash us. We're having a ball. I'm telling you. We have some phenomenal games and analysis. Boris Ospassky is putting together studies on Darui Lopez. Jinzerneem is playing some of the most incredible chess games I've ever seen that I will be presenting videos on. Odoker is just beating up everybody he can possibly play. The guy is an animal with chess. Come and join us. We're having a ball. I'm not kidding. It's a hoot. Now, what was I lying about? Here to the issue. Yeah. Fischer keeps his bishop. Now, those two bishops, oh man, that takes a huge swath right across the center of that board, right? Just be aware. He will bump his B pawn. Now, rook B to D8. Fischer puts it on D8 because, and you know, this makes sense too. If you're wondering, well, yeah, now what do I do? I've backpedaled my bishops. The board's pretty much open. I don't have any knights to have fun with. So what do? Put your rook here to guard that pawn because you don't want your queen babysitting a pawn. The queen is much more useful elsewhere. So put the rook for the moment at guard and let's get the queen going. That's my suspicion of what he was thinking. That rook move makes sense. Right? To me, that makes sense. And now watch what Tears does. Nice outpost, not bad. Knight F4. Bishop E5, a decent response. You notice Fischer has the files. Well, the partial file, very partial. Actually, it's an isolated pawn, and Fischer is just beating the tar out of that pawn. It's covered at this point twice, now 3 times, so it's okay, but that's what White has to worry about, right? A lot of his power is centering on defending just one pawn. So it seems to me like at this point Fischer could get the upper hand pretty good here. So it makes sense to bring the bishop up here because, yeah, you would want to exchange a defender of that pawn, possibly. Depends on the board position, right? So let's see what happens. And Tears doesn't give him a chance. He puts the pawn on a phenomenal outpost. Boom. Man, oh man, that is the best row to have a knight on as an outpost. Yes, but it's not a permanent one. Brats. But he had fun for a moment, yeah? The bishop takes the knight. So Bobby gives up the bishop pair at this point. Yeah, he's done with the bishop pair. That outpost was way too strong. There's no way you're going to leave that outpost there. Can't do it. Better to swap. Swap down a minor piece. Give up your bishop pair at this point. You're doing okay, but this is going to be a tough game. Fischer does have the pawn majority on the king side for an end game if it comes to that. We shall see, won't we? Queen E2, nice little pin. Queen is pinning the bishop to the queen. Okay. Okay. Just pointing that out. A6, take a moment. Yeah, the queen was doing double D. He was hitting the target. Also, take a moment. Strengthen your position a little bit. You don't have to always lash out and attack. So this is good chess here. A6, rook F to E1. Arguing about that center file, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, he's got a pin on the queen. Why not support the queen with a rook behind it? Because the queen is the one that's guarding that bishop at this point. So this is getting tough. They're building a very strong pressure, and Fischer backs down. Queen F7. With the queen, his central rooks are exquisite. Now the bishop still is pinned, but it's not as vital of a pin. You can see the difference here. Wetterschink, in his book on tactics, describes this idea of pins, the relative value of pins against the stronger pieces. Now this pin loses its value somewhat. It's not going to matter at... In fact, Fischer turns it around. If Tears isn't careful, Fischer could produce a discovered attack on the queen, right? So that's why he stepped out of that pin. That makes sense, yes? Okay, so rook B to D1. Again, the central files are strong. Don't give it to him. And Tears has the option of swapping down so that Fischer does not have that central file. That's good chess, truly. That is how to do it. Bishop C3, hit the rook. Target, yeah. However, Tears says, you go ahead. I'm getting rid of this I'm getting rid of the rooks. One way or the other, I'm going to do this. And Fischer does change down, and Tears continues. Remember in the former video I said, if you've got rooks on open files, one, you can't let your opponent have them. It is safer to trade all rooks off the board than leave one on an open file with your opponent having that open file. That's how deadly open files can be. This is the proper response. Whether it's a defense or an offense, it doesn't matter. Bobby's opponent is getting rid of all the rooks. That's, yeah. You have to. There's not a question here. Now, however, at this point, the note of Muller is Bishop d4 would have given winning prospects. Fischer overpushed the bounds swapping. He should have done this instead. But he didn't. So here we go. Queen takes to d1, and now king to g7. Bobby will bump up his king off of the bottom rank. Queen to f3. And he says here that queen d6 would have given white better control. And you can see that, can't you? The central on the file, she just radiates more power there than here. You can see the difference, can't you? So this is interesting. Bobby's opponent kind of makes a minor inaccuracy that could become a major one. He does get a chance to go check to the king, but it's just a one spike check because Fischer dodges out, and then queen b8. Now here, the other idea with putting the bishop to d4 for a winning chance is Bobby's opponent now forces him into exchanging the queens, and it could end up a draw. That's the downside of how Bobby played this. Let's see, queen b8. Queen does come to d4. Now Bobby centralizes his queen, and he's getting ready to somehow get something going against the king, yeah. But queen f8, and then Bobby comes here, and they swap queens, and they drew. So there's a game where Fischer, in later years, the more mature Fischer would not have played it that way to the draw. He would have been able to get the win. So it's wonderful, though, to see the youth gain experience. So I do have another Bobby Fischer game that I want to include on this video for you. It's a dandy. It's one of his games out of the 1956 Canadian Open Championship, which is really interesting. So hang on, and I'll be right back with this second game. Oh, okie dokie. Is that recording? Why is that not recording? Oh, it is recording. There's the dot. Oh, the dot's right on my forehead right now. Boink. Sorry. I could edit that out, but I'm not going to. I'm being the backyard professor, right? Holy shish kebab. Okie dokie. Here we go. Here is the second game. It's the second game in this video. This is one of his games in the Canadian Open. He didn't do so hot in the Canadian Open. Let's see what Muller says. Bobby tied for places 8 through 12 with Janowski, Anderson, Williams, and Bakos. The interesting thing about this is on September 20th, 1956, the issue of Chess Life reported that on Labor Day, September 3rd, Fischer gave a simultaneous exhibition at the Montreal YMCA, and he won 18 out of 18. And he's just a kid still here, so he's already doing simultaneous exhibitions, which is really kind of cool. Okay, so d4, knight f6. Here we go with the Fischer discussion with the Canadians. Let's see how he does. He's playing against a man named Sobel here. And he fianchettos his bishop, and he fianchettos his bishop. And then Fischer castles, and Sobel castles. And now d6, he may want to put the pawn up. He's going to at least start the center pawn movement, of course. They all do, really, truly. We will see this thousands of times. But instead he does this C thrust. He's doing the Sicilian somewhat. E4, and now C takes D. Yeah. And the knight takes the pawn. Yeah, so it transforms into the Sicilian here. Knight C6 and knight D to E2. So he's going to rearrange his pieces somewhat. Fischer continues developing. He's going to bump. He's going to try to fianchetto both sides. Queen to C8 puts a connection with his bishop here, possibly to exchange the guardian of the bishop, or the king here. We shall see, won't we? So Sobel fianchettoed both of his bishops here, and yeah, Fischer goes to H3, and he wants to trade off. Sobel didn't really, but Fischer forced him to it, so the bishop takes, and the king takes the bishop. And now D5, he hasn't pushed the E pawn yet. He's continuing to push that D pawn. It's well covered with the knight. E will take. And now instead of retaking the pawn, he pins it to the queen. He brings his rook onto a file, pinning the pawn to the queen. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Kind of clever that Bobby was, huh? So, of course, he's going to move his... Anytime you get a chance to put a rook across from either a queen or a king, Tartakower said that's always dangerous. So if you see your opponent doing that to you, putting a rook across, even if there's pieces in the aisle across from your queen or your king, pay attention. There's tactics coming up. You really don't want to do that. And Sobel didn't. He immediately moved his queen out, yeah. And now, of course, knight gets out of the attack to B4. So this is getting kind of fun. And he's going to chase the knight off, and of course the knight's going to take the pawn. Yeah, a central pawn like that, take it, take it, take it, baby. The knight will exchange on D5, and the knight will exchange on D5. And now, where is it? Oh, the bishop takes the bishop on G7. And the king will take the bishop. So Bobby has lost the guardian of his king. Sobel has lost the guardian of his king. In fact, they're bishopless. This is an interesting game to see for that reason. They are bishopless. That's kind of odd for a later Bobby Fischer. I don't know if we've seen very many games with Bobby without at least one of his bishops. So this could get fun to watch. He comes C4, hitting the target, the central knight, yes, and Bobby brings his queen up. If he takes the knight, he will take the knight. So he doesn't lose a piece, but notice what Fischer will get. By bringing his queen up, yes, he connects his rooks, but he keeps the open file with that rook also. So he's maintaining his initiative. He's not just reacting to his opponent's threats. He is developing pieces and making threats of his own. That's a great little mini lesson of this game. Really, truly. If you can at all find a way to not just react when your opponent threatens a piece of yours, if you can find a threat of your own with development and support of the center, you see the pillars, central control, rooks on open files, and targets. This is really good. That's quite a move, is what I'm telling you. It's enough commentary. What did he do, man? Queen B2 checkmate. No, I mean check. Spooked you, didn't I? Yeah, whatever. Okay, knight comes back to f6, and at this point, Muller makes a real interesting comment. It does look like a strong attack and an initiative. Fischer is attempting to take away White's initiative. Muller says that the queen here is a stronger move because it will equalize things, for what it's worth. Fischer didn't do it that way. He went like this. So, knight f4 centralizes the knight on the outpost, hitting the queen as a target. Queen comes up to f5. Knight comes to d5 on a splendid outpost, blocking off the open file of Fischer's rook. Fischer's not going to tolerate that. It's not a permanent outpost, but when you see, if it's possible, when you see your opponent putting a knight on an outpost like that, and you have a pawn capability, kick the knight. Definitely kick the knight off that outpost. Silman says that repeatedly. He says, those knights, you don't have to leave it there. That's strong for White. You do not have to leave it there. And now look, Sobel's turn to ignore the threat and make a stronger threat. That's good chess, you guys. I'm just saying. That's really good. So, Fischer is forced to respond, yes. And now, h4. And this is kind of what Bobby was fighting against. He was trying so hard to take away the initiative of White. Notice, White is not backing off. No, nor should he. Not only is he gaining more space, true, it is the castled kingside pawns. Yeah, he's completely wiped out his cover. But because of the position where the queen is, White has the initiative here. It's real interesting how chess works that way. And he says this is the beginning of an absolutely beautiful combination. Juzerneem probably has already seen it while I've been flapping my lip. Odoker and Merlin and Phoenix, some of you really good guys in the club, you've probably already seen the combination. For the rest of us, this is just exquisite. It's beautiful. Fischer just really got clobbered here. This is a fantastic combination. Rook h1. Yeah. So Fischer is forced to bump back to g5, and now rook takes h7. Check. Here it comes. Now, at this point, I want to show you this. This is a terrific. If the king takes the rook, then the knight takes the knight check, right? And king to g7, and now the knight comes to here, discovered check, and Fischer will lose his queen. Man, that's powerful. This Sobel guy has Fischer right where he wants him, right? So this is, I knew I was going to, oh, hang on, I'll be right back. So that explains why Fischer can't take the rook, right? So he goes king to f8, and from this point, queen takes f6. And that's where Fischer resigned at this point. He is done. He's had, so it's one of the difficult losses of Bobby Fischer that I'm sure caused him to study much, much harder. He's in a foreign country and he lost to a very good chess player. So that's the Backyard Professor Chess video for the day. Thanks for watching. You guys be good, have fun. Be good, have fun, do well, drink lots of water, be nice, share the kindness, so on and so forth. Buy good chess books. I've been doing that a little bit. And then we gotta study them, right? Yeah, I play so much online chess that I can't study my books, but you know, there's gotta be a give and take somewhere, you know. Anyway, I have some wonderful games that I've been playing online with some friends that I want to show you, and I've also got some other games from other chess players in our club that I definitely want to show you that will just enthrall you. That is what I'm going to do throughout the week, this coming up week. And so you've got a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.